Alright, here we go, guys. We're in. No shot. No shots. What is this? What is this? You sat in the 5-minute one. Yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. That's what I'm experiencing. Oh! No shots. Did I just... No. Look, I'm okay with getting a long loading screen, but there's just no... Oh! Whoa! Well, I just got teleported to a different dimension! Let's go! To the wasteland we go! Back! We've landed! In the new world! It was worth it, guys! Oh. Welcome everybody, we're back again for another video. This time around, we're gonna be showing you steps to progression. In other words, how to gear up, what's the correct pathing, what is not the correct pathing, tips and tricks essentially, for the returning players, new players, or even just the old accounts who want to gear up really quickly on other servers. The first step is going to get the tedious one out of the way, and that's going to be about salvaging. Now, you don't salvage the gear that you could potentially still use in arenas because everything is going to get bumped up from whatever gear score it currently is. It could be potentially 625 BIS gear, but in arenas and OPRs, it's actually going to be 675, so you're going to be getting those additional stats. However, useless legendary items or named items, you should just salvage that and get dark matter. You will be utilizing this dark matter in the later stages of this video. The very next step is going to accelerate all of your quest lines, everything in your journey, and I highly recommend doing this before you get into the questing itself, and that is get your mount. Now, you don't have to do the full mount quest line, which will also give you additional perks, benefits to the horse itself. You just really need the mount to begin with, and later on, if you've done these additional steps, then you can go back and do your quest line. You can level up your mount, that's all good. But for the meantime, get your mount and then just straight away go to step number 3. Step number 3 is going to be a pretty simple one. Do your main expansion story quest line. You're going to be acquiring this on Eden Grove, and then you're going to adventure towards the new area, the new first light, the reworked area. In Elysian Wilds, I would recommend skipping all of the side quests. Just do your main story quest that you really have to force yourself into. Now, of course, there will be others who want to experience every single quest line, but even the main story quest line is a little bit boring. I'm not fond of the content that we've been given. However, visually it's stunning. I love the area, I love the design of the mobs, I love the new animation and everything that goes into this new reworked area. I was very delightful to see this new area, as it is extremely attractive and just very appealing to the eye. Step number 4, do your faction story quest. This is going to unlock you level 6 rewards. You're going to need this to buy your daily chromatic seals, your weekly Azov inductors to make BIS crafts. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the next steps. However, if you want to stop at step number 4 in this video, you can. You can purchase the 675 gear score faction gear for Syndicate, Covenant, or Marauder. It gives you refreshing enchanted ward and health. And the perks are pretty decent for most classes. Now, it's not going to be BIS. This is not BIS gear. This is not gear that's going to get you into Mutation 3s. You can do Mutation 2s with this and also play arenas, OPRs, wars, open world PvP as well as duels. But if you want BIS gear, you're going to have to move towards the next steps. Step number 5, temporary gear for faster progression. I already talked a little bit about the faction gear. I also mentioned it isn't BIS gear. You're also going to be spending a bit of gold. I think it's about 20k gold, 60k plus tokens. But if you want to go for a better approach in the long term, I would recommend the efficient option number 1 and the cheap option number 2. Option number 1, efficient routes. You got the armory. Now, if you level up your armory, you're also going to be leveling up. Potentially, if you're already at level 64, because in the main story quest, this will bump you up to level 65. Armory routes, I spent about 20k gold. And this is because I already had a lot of materials. There will be a lot of videos out there. There's also a lot of websites such as the New World database that will show you the best way to level up your armory. However, if you want links, I will be posting it down in my description. But let's talk a little bit about the armory. Why should we go for the armory route? Now, first of all, there is bestial gear. Bestial gear is one lock perk crafts that do not require chromatic or Azov inductor gear. You will be utilizing some prismatic materials, and you're going to be obviously locking one mod craft, which you will need to have. This will give you straight up 700 gear score gear that you'll be able to enter Mutation 3 straight away. Now, Mutation 3s is all about the gear score. It doesn't really matter what perks you have. Obviously, there's going to be perks such as the skewer on the weapon and whatnot, which will make a big difference to facilitate your dungeon progression. However, Mutation 3s is kind of the way to go when you want to have progression without spending any money, and that's why the armory route is pretty good, because it's going to be efficient on your costs. You spend about, I would say, an average of 40 to 60k max if you go for a kind of efficient route. Now, if you have materials on you, you could use those as well and make it a lot cheaper. And if you also have guides, better guides about how to make the cost of leveling up armory a lot cheaper, you also could probably reduce that price. I spent about 20k. So that kind of says it all. 20k, I got my armory from 0 to 250. I can now craft the chromatic seal crafts. I can now craft Azov inductor crafts. But I also started my gear with bestial gear because I wanted to straight up go into the mutation 3s and start farming gear there, which is free, of course. You got 35 mutations a week. So that's a great route to actually farm gear without really spending any money. Option number 2 of this route is going to be, instead of doing your armory, you just go straight into dungeons. So you do normal gen or something along those lines, and then you grind your way up to M3. So you're going to potentially get, 600 to 675 gear score gear from the normal dungeon. Could be the new Divine and Savage. And then after that, you do Mutation 1, which requires 625 gear score. You get some gear from there, you bump it up to 675, and then you get to Mutation 2, which is 675 recommended gear score, and up all the way towards Mutation 3. You could also probably buy a couple of cheap pieces that just don't even have any perks. They could literally be green items with high gear score, 695 green ring, for example, and just go straight away into Mutation 3s. That is actually a viable option. Now, this is going to be obviously a more dragged out process because you're going to be having to grind up your progression. But if you don't want to spend any money, or if you don't have any money on your account, maybe it's a fresh account, maybe you just want to go through the grind from the beginning, then this is the route for you. The next step number 6, is going to be the artifacts. Now, first of all, you need to figure out what build you're going to be playing. And depending on the build you're playing, you're going to probably want certain artifacts. For example, if you play my build, you want to play IGVG as a kind of more mechanical DPS, range DPS build, then you're going to need the Life Taker artifact. Now, first steps should be get the artifacts that are the most easily attainable, either be through open world mobs such as the big Harambe in the Elysian Wilds, which is where you get the Life Taker. The next artifacts you should be probably looking for is the PvP track ones. These are pretty easily attainable through the track by just spamming arenas and OPRs. Arenas is what I would recommend. They're the most efficient way of getting experience if you're better than your average player, and that just comes down to the fact that it's less time consuming and you can go and get 3-0 wins in arenas, get your PV track accelerated by doing so, and potentially getting those artifacts from the checkpoints. The final one should be the mutation artifacts. Now, the mutation artifacts, some of them are going to be a lot easier than others to get, just because there will be mutations that are not in the weekly rotation, so you can't even claim them. But then there's also going to be some artifacts that potentially you could get. Let's just assume you have a Barnacles mutation and you are looking to get that Dark Void plate, the heavy chest artifact, to increase 20% elemental and physical armor rating, and also gives you 2 great defensive perks such as the physical as well as an enchanted wards. Now, this will only work if it is a weekly rotation and the mutation is available. Otherwise, there's just no point looking to farm those artifacts in the first place until it does happen. And the final part of the artifacts is essentially doing the quest line, because once you achieve these artifacts, you're going to need to progress the artifact quest. This is going to unlock perks or gem slots depending on the artifact that you have, and then at the end of it all, you can upgrade them with an additional perk or a gem slot by doing the gypsum kiln. Now the gypsum kiln, you will need some materials. Some of these materials are kind of hard to get because they are either locked by the faction story quests, so you need level 6. This is why the faction story quest line was a little bit earlier, so you can do the daily chromatic seals. It's very important that you do this because chromatic seals will be utilized in a lot of different things in your progression, either be for the early game or the later stages of the game, and therefore you will need it. Now, of course, as I mentioned before, artifacts, other gear pieces, named items that you could potentially get that aren't artifacts will require chromatic seals, maybe weapon matrix or the armor matrices, so make sure that you have the chromatic seals stored up. Alright, so we're going to talk about, once again, the gear. Now, this is the final step here, guys, and you're going to have 3 different options. Depending on your mentality, your perspective, how you want to handle things, you're pretty much going to choose one of the 3. First one is what I would recommend, the efficient routes. Now, you're going to need armory for this, and this is why I recommended to have armory on one of the previous steps. And you're going to be able to craft yourself bisque gear or half bisque gear with Azov inductors or chromatic seals. Now, Azov inductors will provide you 3 out of 3 locked perks, but it's extremely expensive. It's 25k for the Azov inductor. You can only do it once a week because that's kind of the cooldown you have on the faction shop. And on top of that, you're going to need prismatic materials. Now, prismatic materials are really not that hard to find, but depending on the server, there's going to be low supply, high demand, therefore it's going to be more expensive. There is a little way you can actually minimize as many materials as you would need to craft them. For example, if you have Morningdale Fort, you don't actually need all 3 prismatic materials. You could have, for example, just the cloth and the ingots and skip out on the leather, because the armoring bonus that you get from the Morningdale Fort would actually compensate for it. So you could potentially just use runic leather or phoenix weave or just Asmodeum instead of, you know, the prismatic version of it. And then on top of that, you got chromatic seals. Now, chromatic seals are much cheaper, and I would recommend doing this. You can do it once a day because you can only get 1 chromatic seal a day from the faction guy. It costs about 5k to get the chromatic seals, and on top of that, you get 2 locked perks. You guarantee yourself a 3rd perk roll, but it's going to be randomized, of course. It's going to be giving you either health or refreshing as the highest chance rolls, and they're great perks to have. So I would highly recommend doing the chromatic seal crafts. And now with that step, you're pretty much going in the right direction of getting full bisque gear for both PvP and PvE. The second option you have, which will be the cheapest option of them all, is to just grind M3s. Now, M3s guarantees you 695 to 700 gear score, and if you're gonna do these, you can do it 35 times a week before the reset happens. Grab a group of friends or a static in general that will tackle these M3s. Some of these dungeons are no joke. For example, the Empyrean Forge final boss is actually kind of hard, so I would recommend for sure getting a group of people that's going to be working together and actually talking about how to tackle some of these dungeons together. If you do make it happen, it can be extremely fun and very entertaining, either for the better or for the worse. But at the end of the day, there is a lot of drops, LEGO drops, that does happen at Mutation 3s. And the last route, which I don't recommend, but if you got deep pockets, alright, you got very deep pockets, you can expend as much money as you'd like, and you really don't want to go through the process of doing M3s, you really don't want to go through the process of leveling up your armory, just ask someone, craft you bisque gear utilizing chromatic seals or Azov inductor, because they're bind on equip, you can actually sell them. So if you go up to someone who's selling Azov inductor crafts or chromatic seal crafts, be like, okay, well, I want you to craft this gear with Azov inductor. I want these 3 perks, sharing fort, sharing heals, and health, who knows, whatever you want, and just buy it off them. And that's it, guys, the 7 steps for gear progression for both PvE and PvP. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you do have any questions, make sure to drop down a comment or on my Discord, and I'll make sure to answer it. Like, subscribe for more content, of course. And I'll be back again for more New World expansion videos on the next one. Have a good one, everyone.